communities without control. Some of the worst aspects of human nature tolerated, indulged, sometimes even incentivized by a state and its agencies that in parts have become literally demoralized.
Civil unrest continues to headline the news in England, but a quieter weekend has officials and police hoping the worst is over. But now the question becomes how to prevent further unrest down the road. Prime Minister David Cameron believes social issues must be addressed. This has been a wake-up call for our country. Social problems that have been festering for decades have exploded in our faces. Do we have the determination to confront the slow-motion moral collapse that has taken place in parts of our country these past few generations? Here to elaborate on the unrest and to discuss how social media played a role in the riots is Stephen Taylor, Director of the National Citizens Coalition. Hey, Stephen.
Hey, Charles. How are you?
And in case I forget to do this later, I'll just do it now. I want to thank you for everything you've done for Canadian bloggers over the years, especially Canadian political bloggers.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure, Charles. It's a labor of love.
All right. You were tweeting virtually 24/7. I know this because I'm on it virtually 24/7. What was it specifically about the riots that got you a Twitter?
Well, it was just this huge news event that the world was sort of tuning into. And of course, you think Britain is this very polite society, or at least you get that sort of impression from their very quaint accents that they are very polite people. And, of course, many Canadians hail from Britain and see themselves in Great Britain as well, and they see it melting down, and it's just absurd. It's sort of this man bites dog aspect of the news where it's like, what the heck's going on in Britain?
I don't want to be, convicted of looking for silver linings here, but is it possible that the riots have forced not just Britain, but Canada and other countries to have a serious national conversation about what the social welfare state has done to the character of the country?
Yeah, Charles, I think if you could look at, the left always likes to talk about root causes of the situation. Well, let's talk about root causes. We've had decades and decades of socialism, which has created this sort of numb state in the United Kingdom, whereas it's a society without consequence. Where's the profit motive in society? Is the profit motive greater for a single mother and her 8 kids to go and get a job, or for the guy to who's just playing Xbox to go out and find gainful employment? No, the profit motive is to just sit around the couch and just to collect another check. Where's the incentive? There is none, and that's what this society that the left has promoted over the last few decades has gotten.
It's one thing to say that we've got millions of people in the UK who are unemployed. That's one thing. We understand that we're in a downturn, but it's another thing to say that we have nearly 2 million people in Britain, adults, who have never worked, ever.
Charles, there's 1 out of 6 people in the UK that's living in government housing. I can't even fathom that statistic. It's absurd. That means there's, 5 out of 6 people paying for another person in essentially their own households in another place. They're subsidizing this destructive society.
Yeah, Britain is broke, and it's a character issue, not just a financial issue. Now, what about the controversy? I think there's a controversy about the fact that the Cameron government is thinking about putting Twitter on pause. What's that about?
Yeah, well, that's probably the most absurd thing I've heard David Cameron say. Now, I'm a conservative myself. David Cameron calls himself a conservative, but we conservatives, we believe in liberty as well. And if you want to shut down the means of democracy to one of the things we enjoy in a democracy is free assembly. Of course, inciting a riot, whether you do it in person or on Twitter, is illegal in most jurisdictions. Why do you have to shut down the tools of democracy? Whereas we've seen in so many other places where people are yearning for democracy, where it hangs on a razor's edge, we see those governments shutting down Twitter. Like, for example, in China, we saw there was this train crash in the last few weeks. China shut down the media in order to preemptively make sure that people weren't criticizing the government because they thought it would cause disorder. What happens when our societies, look to shut down social media, not as a means to restore order, which is what David Cameron was saying, but to preemptively safeguard it. And really, it's a slippery slope, and it's not one that people who enjoy liberty in Western society ever want to see.
When I was first reading about Cameron publicly musing about this, I thought to myself, this is a little too Ahmadinejad for my blood. I gather we're on the same page on that. Stephen, let me ask you, we had James Dellingpole of the Telegraph on today on my Chorus Network radio show. And Dellingpole was a classmate of David Cameron's. He's not happy with the government, and one of the things he's not happy about is this coalition contraption. He said that we've got the problem in Britain that Canada had for years. And I said, well, I understand where you're coming from on coalitions, because oftentimes you have the tail wagging the dog, and we had that for a number of years. And thankfully, God bless the Canadian people, we've got a majority now. Here's the question. Do you think Dellingpole has a point when he is about to suggest in a Spectator column in the UK that Cameron called an election, despite the pact that he's in right now with the Liberals and their coalition, that he called an election because of this particular issue of the riots, and ask the people of Britain for a majority and then run a truly right-of-centre regime? What do you think?
Well, you know, only if he puts his money where his mouth is. One would hope that David Cameron would run on a strong mandate to do these things that he's suddenly become a convert of, which, I mean, he's talked about throwing some of these laggards out of their social housing, those that had family that were involved in the riots. You know, maybe parents take responsibility for their children. If David Cameron is interested in rolling back the welfare state, I think he'd find a lot of people that would be very interested in it. But I haven't really seen much of that, much of those words from David Cameron in the past.
But the thing is that with the coalition government, and I'm not trying to be an advocate for Dellingpole, I'm just throwing this out as a conversation starter. In the coalition that he currently has with the Liberals in the UK, some of those Liberals are to the left of some of the people in Labour. Do you think he could really roll back the welfare state under the coalition contraption?
I do think he is hamstrung by that current arrangement. But again, if he were to call a snap election, I really would hope to see that he would seek a strong mandate. And in fact, because he'd want to differentiate himself from the Lib Dems, being in coalition with him over the last few months, he would certainly have to strike a very distinct character from them. So yeah, he would have to run on a strong mandate. And you know, it's a bit of a political move to do so. But you know, it's one I'd like to see.
Stephen Taylor, thanks very much. Stephen Taylor, the head of a very, very good and grand coalition, the National Citizens Coalition. Thanks as always, Stephen.
Thanks, Charles.
StephenTaylor.com, great blogger. It's August.